At the break of dawn, under a sky still cloaked in pre-dawn shadows, Ukraine launched one of the boldest airstrikes in modern history, a daring assault on the very nerve center of Russia's intelligence operations. This wasn't just an act of war. It was a statement of defiance, precision, and ingenuity. The FSB headquarters in Glutovoy was far more than a regular government building. Tucked just 2 to 2.5 kilometers from the Ukrainian border in Belgorod Oblast, it was a command hub deeply entrenched in Russia's strategic architecture. Staffed by elite operatives and intelligence officers, the facility coordinated cyber warfare, human intelligence, counterinsurgency, and direct action operations along the entire northeastern front of Ukraine. From this compound, operations had been run to suppress Ukrainian resistance, manipulate digital domains, and execute Black Ops missions across the border. This fortress of secrecy stood like a monolith, its walls reinforced, its windows shielded, and its perimeter guarded round the clock by state-of-the-art surveillance systems and armed personnel. The building's design was both functional and symbolic, a blend of brutalist architecture and authoritarian ideology. And now, with the roar of incoming ordnance, that symbol was about to be shattered. The strike didn't come from a cutting-edge stealth drone or fifth-generation fighter. It came from a MiG-29, an aging Soviet-era aircraft that had survived decades of mothballing and battlefield attrition. But this relic had been reborn. It carried technology that belonged to 3 continents. Bolted beneath its wings were AASM hammer bombs, a fusion of French aerospace precision and NATO-grade lethality. These bombs were guided not by an onboard military-grade targeting suite, but by an iPad, jury-rigged to feed coordinates via hacked software. It was innovation forged in desperation, a hallmark of Ukraine's wartime evolution. As the fighter jet made its high-speed ascent to launch altitude, Russian radar operators scrambled. Dozens of alarms buzzed within radar installations across the oblast. Operators were caught in a paralysis of disbelief. Was this a glitch? A training error? The bureaucratic maze that dictated missile launch authorization stalled their reaction. In those precious seconds of hesitation, Ukraine struck. The 2 AASM bombs screamed toward their target. Traveling faster than sound and guided with surgical precision, they homed in on their coordinates with near-zero margin of error. One bomb hit dead center. The other followed in tandem, compounding the devastation. Within seconds, entire wings of the headquarters collapsed. Reinforced concrete turned to dust. Classified files and hardened drives, relics of Russia's intelligence networks, were incinerated in a firestorm of steel and flame. Security forces stationed nearby were left in stunned silence. First responders arriving at the site found nothing but rubble, smoke, and twisted rebar. The intelligence nerve center that had once intimidated an entire region had been neutralized in under 10 seconds. This wasn't just an assault on a building, it was an assault on Russia's aura of control. For decades, the FSB had operated with impunity. Its headquarters were presumed untouchable by geography, by threat of retaliation, by myth. Ukraine's strike obliterated all of that. It redefined the rules of engagement. It declared that no facility, no matter how secure or symbolic, was beyond reach. And perhaps most importantly, it ignited a psychological shift. Across the border, Russian command structures were thrown into disarray. If the FSB couldn't defend its own command post, just kilometers from Ukraine's front line, what did that mean for the rest of Russia's strategic depth? What did it signal to the officers, the soldiers, the bureaucrats who'd long believed in the sanctity of their infrastructure? This was asymmetry in its purest form. A Cold War jet fused with modern weapons, piloted by courage and guided by innovation, had just cracked the heart of Russian intelligence, and the world took notice. Exactly 5 a.m. on May 26, 2025, a Ukrainian Air Force pilot climbed into the cockpit of a MiG-29 fighter jet. A relic of the Soviet era, this 40-year-old warplane had no business carrying the weapons mounted on its wings. Yet within minutes, it would attempt something unthinkable, a direct strike against one of Russia's most secretive and feared intelligence institutions, the Federal Security Service, or FSB. This mission wasn't just a bold military maneuver, it was a geopolitical lightning strike. The jet carried a Frankenstein mix of French precision-guided bombs, American GPS satellites, and Ukrainian ingenuity, all stitched together with duct tape, zip ties, and software hacks. And what lay ahead was unprecedented. The pilot knew the stakes. No military in modern history had dared to strike an active FSB facility inside Russian territory during a conflict. Intelligence hubs like this were considered sacred, untouchable, due to both their strategic importance and the retaliation they might provoke. But this mission would demolish that illusion. The plan was reckless by any measure, even by Ukraine's high-risk, high-reward standards. The pilot had to fly at treetop level, just 50 meters above ground, to avoid radar detection. Then, in a suicidal move, he would rocket upward to 5,000 meters to drop his payload. That climb would instantly light him up on Russian radar like a beacon, inviting every anti-air missile in range to come crashing down. He would have barely 20 seconds to acquire the target, release the weapons, and dive out of sight. It was a race against time, terrain, and the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. At Oro 558, the pilot advanced the throttles. Two Klimov RD-33 turbofan engines snarled to life, propelling the MiG-29 down the tarmac with over 18,000 pounds of thrust. The warbird lifted into the early dawn sky, a mechanical phoenix armed with hybrid firepower from 3 different nations. This wasn't just a sortie, it was a technological miracle. By 0615, the MiG was slicing through the Ukrainian countryside, flying barely above the wheat fields. The jet's exhaust bent stalks and panicked flocks of birds. This was nap of the earth flying at its most extreme. Each passing second demanded unflinching concentration. The smallest mistake, one stray power line, a missed antenna, would mean instant death. But that same low-altitude flight was what kept him alive. Just across the border, in Russia's Belgorod Oblast, S-400 surface-to-air missile systems stood ready. With a reach of 400 kilometers, these systems were lethal, but they required line of sight. At such a low altitude, Earth's curvature acted as the pilot's shield. Radar detection was limited to a roughly 25-kilometer horizon. He was flying under their gaze, at least for now. Then came the next phase. The strike. Duct-taped to the MiG's instrument panel was an iPad, not a military-grade targeting computer. An iPad. Its screen glowed with GPS coordinates. It marked the target, the FSB headquarters in Glutovoy, Belgorod Oblast. Correction. The facility lies 2 to 2.5 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, not 5 meters, as was erroneously reported earlier. This wasn't just an intelligence outpost. It was the nerve center for clandestine operations along the northeastern Ukrainian front, a command and coordination site for agents, informants, and cyber warfare, a symbol of Russian control, and now a bullseye. Underneath the wings of the MiG-29 were 2 French AASM Hammer bombs. These precision-guided munitions were designed for NATO aircraft, not Soviet-era jets. Ukrainian engineers had to rewire the jet, literally. Custom-built pylons were fitted. GPS antennae were glued and bolted in place. Wiring was rerouted through access panels never designed for this purpose. The iPad, using custom software, acted as the intermediary, converting targeting data into instructions the French bombs could recognize. Each AASM Hammer was a marvel of modern warfare. Its guidance package combined inertial navigation and GPS precision. Its booster allowed a range of up to 70 kilometers. Each carried a 250 kDr warhead capable of penetrating bunkers or precisely eliminating a single window of a building. But without communication, they were just expensive cargo. That iPad was the translator between Cold War steel and 21st century targeting logic. At 0622, the pilot reached the initial point. It was time. He yanked the control stick back. The MiG-29 screamed into a 45-degree climb. His radar warning receiver lit up like a Christmas tree. Multiple lock-ons. Russian radar stations had spotted him. S-400s tracked his ascent. He was seconds from death, but also seconds from success. The Russian operators hesitated. Their software wasn't calibrated for this scenario. Who climbs into missile range from within a strike zone in a legacy jet? The cognitive dissonance bought the pilot precious moments. At 5,000 meters, the iPad flashed green. Optimal release confirmed. The pilot dropped both bombs, then executed a combat roll, inverting and diving back towards safety. Missiles launched, but he was already disappearing beneath the radar horizon. The bombs were now flying solo. Their solid fuel motors ignited, hurtling them toward Glutovoy. GPS guidance adjusted for wind, curvature, and altitude. These weren't dumb munitions. They were intelligent, self-steering juggernauts. And the S-400s, designed to shoot down planes, couldn't catch them. 2 interceptor missiles were launched, but their tracking systems were optimized for high-altitude targets. The MiG was gone, and the bombs were too fast, too small, and approaching at unpredictable angles. At 0627, the first bomb arrived. Its radar fuse calculated descent rate, speed, and altitude. The detonation sequence was perfect. The bomb sliced through the FSB building's roof and detonated 3 floors deep, creating a shockwave traveling at 8,000 meters per second. Walls imploded. Steel support beams snapped like twigs. 1 second later, the second bomb landed just 20 meters from the first. With the building already compromised, this blast caused a total collapse. Floors pancaked. Concrete vaporized. Shrapnel and paper spiraled through the air in a firestorm of glass and flame. The entire structure folded in on itself. In less than 10 seconds, what had been a heavily fortified symbol of Russian power was reduced to a smoldering crater. Senior Lieutenant Smirnov watched in disbelief. He had been monitoring radar returns from a station nearby. His screens showed the MiG too late. The missile response was clumsy. Too many authorizations. Too much bureaucracy. Too little time. The S-400s had failed, not because they were bad, but because they were too complex for an enemy willing to think asymmetrically. The bombs, with their pinpoint guidance, didn't rely on brute force. They relied on surgical precision. Each made 50 corrections per second as they dove at a steep angle. Their radar cross-sections were minuscule, their flight profiles erratic and optimized. The results were devastating. Files turned to ash. Office furniture became flaming wreckage. Surveillance equipment melted. Hard drives were destroyed. Intelligence officers never saw it coming. This was more than a tactical strike. It was a strategic revelation. From a 40-year-old Soviet aircraft retrofitted with French bombs, powered by American GPS, and guided by Ukrainian ingenuity, a clear message was delivered. No Russian asset is safe, not even the FSB. The battlefield has changed. Geography no longer guarantees security. Legacy systems mean little against creativity and courage. And for the first time in the war, the veil of invincibility surrounding Russia's intelligence infrastructure has been ripped away for the world to see.